It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Yellow Wiggle Emma Watkins, known by kids all around the country these days as Emma Memma, joins me on the podcast today to chat Wiggles and a new project that every parent will want to know about in collaboration with Audible. I am so excited. Emma Watkins. I've spoken with some pretty high-profile people on the Happy Families podcast over the years, but I don't know too many that would be as warmly welcomed by our Happy Families audience as you. So good to have you on the pod. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Justin. That was a lovely intro.
And well, I think that it's well-deserved. Let me start with the Wiggles. Iconic group, serious performers. And you wore the yellow jersey for close to a decade. I feel like I'm suddenly talking about the Tour de France. You wore the yellow jersey. Do you call it a jersey, a jumper, a sweater? What do you call it?
Well, we used to call it a skivvy, but then when we would tour in North America, that kind of means your underwear. So then we would always say yellow shirt. So, you do have to be careful about, how you refer to the skivvy in different countries.
Well, as a keen cyclist, I'm going to go with the yellow jersey. I just like it.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Emma, you're also the first female Wiggle as well. I know that you've told this story a lot, but there's going to be a whole lot of parents who listen to the Happy Families podcast that don't know how you became a Wiggle. Can you walk us through the story of becoming the first female yellow Wiggle, or becoming the first of the non-original Wiggles as well, if I recall correctly? How did that happen? And as you look at that decade, what are your memories? Like, how do you reflect on that time now that you've moved on to other things?
Oh, look, it was an amazing experience. And I spent my whole 20s at the Wiggles. So it feels like the biggest apprenticeship of my whole life. Like, I feel like that was my college. That was my university situation. But essentially, I graduated school and went to film school because I had an injury, even though I was a dancer. I'm trying to be concise here. So I grew up as a dancer, went to film school, did film, went back to uni, did film and dance, went back to dance full time, and then auditioned for a range of shows. And this audition for the Wiggles came up, and I'd already auditioned for them before but hadn't been successful, and they were looking for a fairy, and I had fairy-esque hair and happiness and ballet training, and I got the job. So I worked with the Wiggles for about a year and a bit as a fairy, doing Dorothy the dinosaur, Wags the dog, and then all of a sudden I was on the road with the original Wiggles, and it was a dream come true. I was a wiggly dancer, I played lots of instruments, and then I just randomly, one day before a show in Sydney, got asked to be a Wiggle. That's honestly what happened.
Just in the corridor, backstage.
Just random. Just backstage. Just in my dressing room. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
And for the first time in Wiggle history, a female Wiggle. It's Emma Watkins, everyone. Emma Wiggle.
Hi, everyone.
An amazing experience and obviously the opportunity to touch so many lives. Since then, parents, I feel like I'm skipping through this so fast, but there's so many things I want to talk to you. And this is the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now. Since then, parents of slightly older kids may be less familiar with Emma Memma. Can you tell us about her? Because you graduated, is that the right word? You moved on from the Wiggles. Yeah. Emma Memma, walk us through the Emma Memma character, what that is, who that is, for parents who may not be familiar with the evolution of Emma Watkins.
So I left the Wiggles in 2021 after a big chunk of time, not touring because of the pandemic. So at that moment in my life, I was already parallel studying my PhD, integrating sign language and dance for children. And so I had more time to study, but also I recognized that my research was becoming important and we needed to finish it. So I decided to leave. I focused on my PhD, and through that research came our brand new children's character and venture called Emma Memma, which essentially is all music, all dancing, where visual communication is at the forefront of the media. So we highlight sign language and gesture, visual language, and of course, dance.
I love this. So you've highlighted that you're no longer just a Wiggle or just Emma Memma. Please forgive the pejorative with just. That's a complimentary thing, but rather you've done more again. These days you're also Dr. Emma Watkins. I'm fascinated when you've already got this incredible, I'm going to call it a showbiz career. Why a PhD? And you've hinted that there's a lot of inclusivity, sign language and music. How do these things come together? How did you turn that into a PhD? I just love that whole academic story, if you can help me with that.
So it's a good question, Justin, because I feel like my life has been very in parallel with uni and also performing, but probably because at school, and I went to a performing arts high school in Sydney, we were always told, have a plan B. Make sure you've got other things going on. Because even when I was auditioning for different shows like Cats or Wicked, I was at university, at UTS, studying media in the hope that I could work in a production company, and I was earning money editing for other production companies on the side. So when I finished at UTS, I had an amazing mentor, and he said to me, I think you should do a PhD because you've got such a unique skill set in dance. And I kept doing all of my assignments as dance films. So I clearly was only interested in one thing, even though at the time at the university, I was told by somebody higher up, oh, you can't do dance and film. And so I think from that point on, I was like, nah, I think I'll just do it. And then when I joined the Wiggles, I was able to film and edit and also perform. So I had the ability to do both. And so through that, one of the amazing researchers that I was researching at the time was from America, Dr. Karen Perlman, and she was a dancer in her life. She is a dancer, and she wanted to learn about and teach how dancers have a specific intuition with editing. And I was like, that's weird because I feel like that. As in, I like filming, but it's not my forte. I really love editing. And so when I researched her, I don't know how this came about, but she magically was now living in Australia and teaching at the Macquarie University. So I contacted her and explained my life story, growing up with deaf friends and always having an interest in sign language, and how can sign language and dance and film editing be brought together to help visual communication for children.
Can we do a lightning round? Quick questions, quick answers.
Okay.
All right. Lightning round. Question number 1. As the yellow Wiggle, what is your favourite Wiggle song?
Oh, I really like the giraffe, but mostly because live we had blow-up giraffes going out into the audience. So that was pretty fun and the children loved it.
Okay. Part 2 of that question that's just popped into mind as you say that, what was the song that you would sing at concerts that got the biggest response from the 2 to 5-year-old set?
That's a good question. I mean, it would change all the time. I mean, mostly Rockabye You Bear, Hot Potato, Do the Propeller, things that people were like, yes, I'm into this.
Yeah. I mean, Hot Potato's just become a classic, hasn't it?
Exactly.
It's going to last for decades and decades. Did the audience go crazy at screaming the same way that they might at a Billie Eilish concert, a Taylor Swift concert? Really?
Absolutely. It's just a different pitch
Yeah, right.
for 3-year-olds rather than, 13, 23.
Emma, what's the weirdest or most unique talent you have?
I can do precision driving.
As in like kind of rally car style?
Yeah,
driving.
like rally cars. My dad's a rally navigator.
Really?
And I grew up doing precision driving on skid pans.
Oh, that is unexpected. I love it. What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Yes, probably like before, don't do dance and film at the same time, or you can't do both, or don't have extra hobbies.
I want to come back to something that you said about having the backup shortly, but 2 more questions for the lightning round first.
Okay.
What's one thing that you've learned about yourself since leaving the Wiggles?
That I think I've got more to give. And in the last 3 years, I've done so many different projects that I never would have dreamed of. And I've met so many people that I've just had the best and busiest 3 years of my life.
Speaking of busy, I mean, PhD, Wiggles, Emma, now the new collaboration with Audible, Rally Driver apparently as well, and who knows what else you're doing. What's your go-to self-care ritual when you need to recharge?
Hopefully, when I get home, I'm on tour a lot, but when I'm home, I like going out to visit my goats in the paddock and actually just hanging out with them.
You have property?
Well, we don't necessarily. We live in the country, but my goats, because we didn't have a fence when we moved here, they live with my friend down the road who has 14 other rescue goats. And so they're in a herd. And so I go and visit them. I
love this. This is just, I can imagine that the Daily Mail is going to have some fascinating fun with our conversation. Emma Watkins hangs out with the goats. I want to go back to something that you said earlier, Emma, before we move on to my last 2 questions. You highlighted that your university lecturers and people around you always said, if you want to go and do I call these, I guess, vanity occupations where everybody wants to do it, but only a very small percentage of the people who want to actually get to do it. So whether it's radio or media or dance or music or being an influencer or a streamer or whatever, these are things where there's millions of people who are saying, oh, I want to do that so bad. I want to be a Hollywood actor, but you end up waiting tables because it's just so competitive, so hard to get into. My advice generally for younger people, I give a lot of talks in schools to year 10, year 11, year 12, especially as school starts to move towards completion. My advice is often don't listen to people like me who have followed my dream, because people who follow their dreams, some of them make it, and they're the ones that stand up on stage and say, follow your dream, follow your dream, follow your dream. But there are a lot of people who follow their dream and end up waiting tables, so to speak. And so my argument to them is go on, select a career where 90+% of the people who want to do it can do it, and then get in the top 5 or 10%. Like, just be really, really good at that and pursue your hobbies on the side. You and I have both had the joy and the privilege of doing things that we absolutely love, despite the odds. And what I'd love to ask of you is that good advice or is that bad advice? How do you respond to that question?
I really appreciate that, Justin, because I think it's always a moment in your life, when you have some experience or you're old enough to have self-reflection and go, okay, let's be realistic about, where I'm going to make money and what's my livelihood. And I know that seems basic, but it's true. Like, how do you survive and work and, be with your family and, do the things that you love? But there is a moment where you do have to be realistic about potentially not getting that first dream. And I really admire some of the people that I went to school with that also danced with me. And my whole life was dance. Like, I can't express it enough. All I did was dance. That's it. I just loved dance. And there was so many other people in my class that now don't dance, but they've used their skills in a very smart way to do something slightly on the outskirts and have nailed life. One of my really good friends who grew up with me as a dancer, and everyone's dream in the dance school is to dance, of course, but she was one of those people that recognized that she could bring her dance skills to another industry, and she ended up being a sign language interpreter. She qualified before me. She'd seen that I was doing sign language and was like, yeah, maybe I could do that, but I wasn't doing it in a serious way at that time. She went and did all of her exams, and now in Australia, she's one of the most sought after performing arts sign language interpreters. You'll see her on social media, everything, and she is nailing it. She's not performing as a dancer, but she's using her skills that she learnt to bring that to a whole new set of audiences.
Yeah, and making a beautiful contribution at the same time.
Yeah, and living, earning money, being in front of a crowd. There is a sense of performing, I appreciate that, but her skill set is slightly different now than what she was training for, when she was 18.
Emma, I'd like to ask you a personal question if I can.
Yes.
The majority of our listeners are mums, many of whom will have experienced fertility challenges or know somebody who has. You've been quite open about your own experiences with endometriosis and the challenges that presented during your time with the Wiggles and probably even subsequent to that. Can I ask you to maybe share a little bit around that? How's that shaped your perspective on resilience and self-care and advocating for your own needs, and even decisions that you have to make on a personal level about what your family is going to look like as you move forward, how you're going to live your life? What's that like in your circumstances?
Look, I was probably very ignorant to my body for a long time. Mainly, again, as a dancer, you just kind of work through pain. I think that's just a subset of training and working your body to a point where, when you're stretching, obviously there's a level of pain and you push through. And so for many, many years when I was touring, I didn't realize that I had endometriosis or symptoms of endometriosis at the time. But then when things got really bad, then I started to look into it, and then it got to the point where I couldn't perform. And I had to have a surgery. Whereas I think now, if I was presented those symptoms, I would have loved the opportunity to maybe not have the surgery, but I knew at that time there was no other option. So I had a surgery, and through the surgery was diagnosed with stage 4 endo. And, really when I think back, I don't even know how I missed that. Like, how did I not realize? There are a lot of asymptomatic, situations where you don't know, but mine was terrible and I wasn't stopping to look after myself. So it has taught me to be a little bit more kind. And also I'm a go-getter and I love doing 17 things at the same time. But I do recognize that rest and sleep and being home and being with the goats is just as important.
I love that. The goats need to feature prominently in this conversation, maybe even in the title of the podcast.
Yeah, they can.
Emma, thanks for sharing that. You've recently done something new that I'm really interested in talking to you about. And as soon as I saw the email about this, I just thought my audience will love this. I actually wanted to create something with my soothing voice doing the same sort of thing that you're doing. I never did it, and I don't think that I am the right person for it, but I think you are. You've collaborated with Audible and created something called A Dream for Every Night. Tell us about A Dream for Every Night and what's, if I can be so corny as to say, what's your dream for how it's going to fit in with families who are so busy and so torn and so stretched?
Look, I take my hat off to all parents anyway, because I don't know how parents do it. And mostly I think about my sister-in-law with her 2 little boys and, the projects that come to us, I always think, what are they going to love it? Are they going to be interested? And that when this project came across, I thought, wow, what an amazing collection of stories. So essentially, A Dream for Every Night is the title of a book that's created by author Angela Casabene, and there are 160 stories. So it's not just a few, just 160 of them. And so we decided to go through and choose our favorite ones. And we chose 40 stories that actually start the podcast or the audiobook. And we read these stories and have added amazing, soundtrack, animal noises, ambience, and music. And I'm hoping that the audiobook can be enjoyed by families just before bedtime. I mean, you could listen to it at any time. I'm not saying that you have to listen to it at the same time, but I hope that families enjoy this as a way to set the dreams off into the night.
Emma, as I've looked at the work that you've done and the career that you've already had, I mean, and there's so much more in the future, I think you're an inspiration. I love what you've done. I have so many more questions that I would love to ask you. Oh. But because this is the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now, and we have already gone over time, thank you for indulging those questions. Thanks for your generous answers. And thanks for the great work you do and the inspiration and joy that you bring to so many, not just Australian families, but families around the world. I congratulate you on an amazing life so far.
Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate it.
Emma Watkins, former Yellow Wiggle, Emma Memma, and now host of the Audible series, A Dream for Every Night. Your kids will love it. You'll probably love laying down beside them and listening to it as well. You will fall asleep, but you'll enjoy every single story. Emma, great to be with you. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rollon from Bridge Media. For more information about the things we've talked about today, we'll link to several of these elements, particularly the Audible series, A Dream for Every Night, in the show notes. And if you'd like more info about making your family happier, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.